There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch Michael Byler.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories, the early day version of Coffee with Cannon. We're live on the air. This Richard Allen case, he just a sort of a breaking bit of news is that he wrote a letter or petition to the court requesting counsel. And apparently, in his words, he had no idea how much attorneys cost. I guess now he knows. So he penned a jailhouse letter saying his wife is in hiding and he is at the mercy of the court. So Richard Allen, charged with the 2017 Delphi murders, has penned a jailhouse letter claiming that his wife has been forced into hiding and that he is now at the mercy of the court. Richard Allen, age 50, sent a handwritten letter to the Carroll Circuit Court and those associated, begging the court to appoint him a public defender to represent him as he faces trial for the murders of Libby German and Abby Williams. In the letter obtained by the Independent, Mr. Allen revealed that his wife, Kathy, has been forced to leave both her job and the couple's home in Delphi for her own safety. In the cause listed above, I, Richard M. Allen, hereby throw myself at the mercy of the court. I am begging to be provided with legal assistance and a public defender or whatever help is available, he writes. Mr. Allen previously told the court that he didn't need a public defender because he planned to hire his own legal team. But the 50-year-old said that at the time he had no clue how much attorney costs could be. At my initial hearing on October 28, 2022, I asked to find representation for myself, he wrote in the letter. However, at the time, I had no clue how expensive it would be to just talk to someone. I also did not realize what my wife, her immediate financial situation was going to be. He added, we have been forced to immediately abandon employment, myself due to incarceration, my wife for personal safety. She has to abandon our house, and for her own safety, what little reserve there is will fail to maintain their original residence. Mr. Allen signed off the letter by reiterating his pleas for legal assistance. Again, I throw myself at the mercy of the court. Please provide me with whatever assistance you may think. Thank you for your time in the most urgent matter, he wrote. The letter was signed by Mr. Allen and addressed to Carroll County Court, with a court stamp dated November 9th. The return address on the envelope shows the White County Jail. That's the facility where Mr. Allen was being held before he was moved to an undisclosed state facility for his own safety. I mean, we understand in this country that everyone is provided with legal counsel. And it's so important in a case like this because if he's not provided with competent counsel, he can wind up beating the case on a technicality. So the judge or the court, if you may, must appoint a competent, not just a counsel, but a competent counsel, because in this case, he's going to be going up against the state, the prosecution, of course, and the state is going to be very competent. They're going to have the best prosecutor possible. And before we go into whether or not this case is going to be moved, change of venue, whether this case is going to be moved to another county, it has to be tried in the state of Indiana. We know that. But potentially it could get a change of venue. And let me just play a little bit of this before we get back and start talking about a I apologize, guys. I forgot to put them my can they get anyone in the jury pool? You know, they may have to move this case outside of Carroll County. Can they find anyone in the jury pool that doesn't know about this case? Uh, doubtful that they could find anyone in the jury pool in another county. However, potentially jurors in Carroll County would be much more prejudiced in regards to this case because they are from the community, and everyone, you show that bridge that's on the screen right now, and immediately people say, "Oh, that's the Delphi case." You show Doug Carter, the superintendent of the Indiana State Police, and everyone knows immediately, "Oh, that's the Delphi case." So it would be very, very difficult to take this case anywhere and to find an unprejudicial jury. But as far as him getting counsel, he needs to have top defense counsel, because if he doesn't, again, it leads it open for an appeal. The big thing in this case that everyone wants to know, and the press, I imagine both the print press and the broadcasting press, is freaking out with the fact that the probable cause document still has not been released. And they're all chomping at the bit. They want this document released. They want to know what's in that probable cause. And what that does is that gives them an idea of what occurred during the murder of these two girls, Abby and Libby. And that information, I would believe, is eventually going to be released, probably sooner than later. That it would be released, because they can't hold this off forever. Because, look, I said on a previous broadcast, if this was New York City, the power of the press, the New York Times, the broadcast networks, they would have already been able to get this released. And the fact that they haven't been able to get this released in Carroll County is pretty amazing to me, because I think that the law is on the side of the broadcast stations and the print broadcast, because the Freedom of Information law gives them the right to have the information. Folks, knowing the details of the case for the defendant and the defense attorney is called discovery. And in a criminal prosecution, the prosecution is required to turn over all evidence to the defense attorney, thus to the defendant, so that they can prepare an adequate defense in order to move forward. So, folks, you hear it there, that this case is still very much an ongoing case, very much a case that they're requesting help from the public. Mickey Mantle, thank you so much for the 20-pound super chat. All the best, Supreme Commander. Guys, the Supreme Commander mugs are out. A lot of you folks have been asking me, when are the Supreme Commander mugs going to be out on your merch? Well, they're out. So if you want to get someone a Christmas present, the Supreme Commander mug is available, and other merchandise with the Supreme Commander logo that Josh, our engineer, has so expertly put together. And Mickey Mantle, thank you so much. That's very generous of you. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. If you're not subscribed to us, please go on our YouTube. Go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and ring that bell. If you want to subscribe to us not subscribe, if you want to support us on our Patreon, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels. And we also have a YouTube channel with 5 different levels. And you can see the folks in the green font. They are part of our YouTube family, and we really appreciate them, the support, all the support that they give us. You know, we've had a lot of discussion in regards to what is the possibility that, or why are they not releasing the probable cause warrant? What is going on? Why has the court been so secretive with this? And one of the Peter Krusko, a former Queens, New York prosecutor and federal prosecutor, and now a defense attorney, he listed several different reasons why that is a possibility. And one is there could be a possible confidential informant on this case. And they could be trying to protect that person or persons' identity by not releasing the information. That was the rallying cry. On the screen is a picture of Abby and Libby, and that was the rallying cry during this whole case. Today is the day. 5.5 years. And today is the day was the rallying cry, basically saying that today is the day we're going to make an arrest in this. And of course, we know today there was a day, and that was October 28th, where Richard Allen was arrested for this. When you hear him sort of whining in that letter to the court, and I understand due process and that everyone needs a defense attorney, but when you think of what he potentially did to these girls, and in that scope, in that vision of what occurred, think of him whining for a defense attorney. Does anyone really care about his financial situation or his family's situation? No, if this is true, he murdered 2 young girls. And I know we're a country of rights and due process, and we all agree, yes, he should get counsel. But in looking at the bigger picture, do we care that much? I guess we have to. Jennifer Bossert, the probable cause affidavit and discovery will become available. We just have to be patient. Court proceedings are public. We have a right to see all that, however, when it's time. Jennifer Bossert, you're so right. Many defense attorneys, when I was a police sergeant, when I was a cop, they would prepare for a trial and they would say, be it on court at XYZ day, we're going to start the trial. And the very first day of the trial, they would hand the defense 2 boxes full of paperwork, full of evidentiary material, full of photo exhibitions, all kinds of stuff. And invariably, the defense attorney would sort of freak out and say, Your Honor, how can I be ready for trial when I was just handed a few seconds ago 2 boxes of evidentiary material? I'm going to need at least a month to prepare for this. And pretty much all the time, the judge, because of the amount of evidentiary material, would grant the month for the defense to prepare for all the evidence that he or she was just handed. And that was a technique that prosecutors used to use. And I don't know if they still do. Sean Pellegrino, I don't think I'm muted. I think I'm, anyone else not hearing me? I think I have it up pretty loud. I was muted before when the other sound was on. I can picture Seattle Ryan. I can picture a bag with a change of clothes under his blue jacket while his hands remain free to round up the girls. Something, this case is just an incredible case that has captured the imagination. Lieutenant Pete says, I'm 5x5. That's all police lingo for when you ask for a radio check. And if you were good, they would say you're 5x5. Or if you were bad, they'd say you're 1x1 or 2x2 or 3x3. But 5x5 meant you were loud and clear. Ruth Ann Griffin, good to see you. So it's, again, we are all sort of losing it that, oh my God, where is the probable cause warrant? Where is the Freedom of Information law in telling us why was he arrested and what did he do? And that's what we want to see. And also the indictment affidavit. Why can't we see that? All of this stuff has still not come out. Another reason that they may be withholding the probable cause warrant is to protect the evidence. Is there some kind of smoking gun evidence that they need to protect? Janice Peace, I think so far they have already messed up the case, moving him so he is safe from one place to another, and the judge stepping down. This is very telling to the public who could be on the jury. Well, Janice Peace, I think if the judge recused himself, he felt that he maybe was not the best judge to be on this case. Maybe he has reasons that are very good reasons. Maybe he's related to someone in this case. This is a small town. Don't forget, many people know each other in this town. That could be a reason to recuse yourself right there. Kim Alliston, Sergeant Bill, if he is the evil perpetrator, in my opinion, I'm only concerned that justice is achieved for the parents of Abby and Libby, and also for the lovely angels, for Abby and Libby. Yes, of course, we want justice for them, but in getting justice for Abby and Libby, we also must make sure that Richard Allen receives a competent defense, because if he does not receive a competent defense, he can appeal. And sure enough, in a case like this, he would appeal, because he'll have all the resources with competent defense attorneys to appeal the case. And do we want that? No, we want the case tried by the numbers the first time. When I say by the numbers, we don't want any legal mistakes made. We want the judge in the case to make all the right calls in regards to the legal parameters allowed in this case. So you don't want a judge objecting to something or withholding something, and later on a court of appeals can say that was the wrong decision. And we're going to give, based on that, we're going to give the defendant a new trial. The fact that this case has to be tried once is too much for the people of this community to bear. And I don't mean, of course, everyone gets a trial, but it's too much in regards to what this community has been through. 5.5 years of looking for the perpetrator that murdered these two young girls. Horrible, horrible situation. So we want to make sure when this case goes to trial that it only happens once, that there's no appeal, that everything is done correctly. And to do that, we need a competent judge, and we need actually to give Richard Allen competent defense attorney. Let me play a little bit of this here.
It's been nearly 2 weeks since Richard Allen was charged with the murders of Abby Williams and Libby German in Delphi, Indiana. And now Allen is asking for a public defender. I'm Anjanette Levy, and welcome back to Law and Crime Sidebar Podcast. There are still so many questions surrounding this case. We've been following it for you for the last couple of weeks, and documents about this case remain sealed. I find that highly unusual. Usually you get some type of little nugget from a probable cause statement or something to that effect. Not in this case. The documents are sealed, and now Richard Allen has actually been moved to a secret location. He's been in 2 county jails. Now he's in an undisclosed location where he's being held. And he's written a letter to the court asking for a public defender because he didn't realize how expensive it was going to be to retain private counsel. So joining me to talk about all of these developments are 2 people who've been following this case for a really long time. They are Anya Kane and Kevin Greenlee, and they host the Murder Sheet podcast. Anya and Kevin, welcome back to Sidebar. Thanks for
So, folks, you see that everyone is talking about the release of the probable cause warrant, and the fact that hasn't been released is highly, highly unusual. And could that be a problem? Could that be a reason for appeal? I mean, I'm surprised at this juncture that many different media outlets have not filed legal documents to force the court to release these documents. Before you know it, this will all be moot, or moot. I don't mean mute, moot. It'll be mute, like be quiet. No, moot, because they'll release all this stuff. Follow the grain in your own wood. It is frustrating to offer what these beautiful young girls didn't receive. A defender. Follow your grain in your own wood. I agree with you. I mean, but we know we can't help but feel that as human beings, but also intellectually, we have to know and realize that everyone, no matter how bad they are, they have to get a competent defense. And we struggle with that because these girls were not given no defense. They were murdered, and now the perpetrator in this case, and again, he's innocent till proven guilty. He was arrested based on probable cause. And every time I do the show and I tell probable cause, I always say probable cause, which because I think we throw that term around without necessarily knowing what it means. Probable cause are facts and circumstances that would lead a reasonable person to believe that a crime has been committed and the person arrested has committed that crime. Is that the highest standard? No. What is the standard necessary to prove someone guilty in a court of law? I want to see someone bark that out in the chat, but or else I'm just going to have to. I'll wait a few seconds. Someone should tell me, what is the standard necessary to convict someone in a criminal court of law in this country? What is it? My God, you guys aren't paying attention in class. I want to see someone say it before I have to give it up. Okay, guys. There, Heaven 57, almost beyond a reasonable doubt. Yes. I always remember that acronym, BARD, B-A-R-D, beyond a reasonable doubt. So what is the job of the defense then if we have to convict someone beyond a reasonable doubt? What is it? What is the job of the defense? Yes, thank you for all your answers, all you guys shouting answers at me. I feel like I'm teaching again. The job of the defense is to create doubt, right? To create doubt. And as you see, defense attorneys will question paperwork, question competency of detectives, question evidence. Why do you think this evidence means that? Yes, Jennifer Bossett, it is the state's responsibility to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And the defense's job, a defense attorney's job, is to create doubt. Exactly. Janice Peace, Ron Logan could create doubt. Yes, I mean, there's a lot of things that could create doubt. They'll try to come up with an alibi for Richard Allen. Oh, he couldn't have been there. He was here. I don't know if they will try that. Daniel K. Bill, a person with zero criminal history can win by acquittal, not guilty verdict, can still lose in certain circumstances. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Daniel K. A person with zero criminal history can win by acquittal, not guilty verdict, and still lose in certain circumstances. Danielle, I think that would need a lot more discussion than the time we have for that here. Yes, the prosecutor probably has lots of information. When we talk about even evidence, what is evidence? What is evidence? Evidence is something that makes something apparent like a display, like a piece of physical evidence. Like in this case, is there a murder weapon? Clothing with blood on it. Clothing that was taken from that scene by the perpetrator as a souvenir or as a trophy, as the FBI would say, which is very common, by the way, in murder cases. Very common that serial killers take trophies. And you know why they do that? The reason they do that is pretty sick. So they can take out that trophy or that souvenir and relive the feeling of the murder. Many times it's psychosexually connected to the warped mind of the killer. And that is why a trophy or a souvenir is taken by murderers, so they can relive the feeling that they had during the case. Just really sicko, you know. There's the Judge Dina, who on the left of your screen, who recused himself. And of course, on the right is the mugshot of Richard Allen. You know, one of the things we discuss a lot, you know, in criminality, is it unusual for a murderer to not have a criminal history and starts out with a double murder? No, it actually it happens. But I mean, why does law enforcement always look into the history of the background of the murderer or of any perpetrator? And I think it's best said that, you know, I always used to listen to John Jay, Professor Dr. Maki Haberfeld, who used to say that past behavior is a very good indicator of future behavior. But conversely, does that mean that if you didn't have a criminal history, that you couldn't have started on this day? You couldn't have started murder on this particular day? No, obviously it happens all the time. Sometimes murder, homicide, death caused by another, that happens to be the definition of homicide, death caused by another. Murder, the taking of someone's life with malice. Last behavior is the best predictor of the future, Daniel K. Yeah, I mean, that's basically what I said. Past behavior is usually indicative of future behavior. Because I've had people say to me, oh, what does it matter what the person's criminal history was? There's the answer. Past behavior is quite indicative, usually, of future behavior. You know, someone just doesn't turn over a new leaf because, you know, they saw the Lord, you know, they saw the Lord. This is the judge, the new judge that's going to try this case. Her name is Fran Gull. You want to have a very experienced judge in these cases because, again, if a judge makes the wrong call, it leaves the case wide open for an appeal. And we do not want an appeal. In this case, we want this case to go forward. We want it to be prosecuted one time. And when you have an experienced judge, that's going to be the case, that it's going to be prosecuted once. I want to play a little bit of this. You know, when we look back on this case and we realize it goes back 5.5 years, and we think of all the hills and the valleys and the frustrations and the work and the predictions and the community and how the community really suffered through this, as well as the families of Abby and Libby. I think that, as the superintendent, Doug Carter, said, that Abby and Libby are everyone's daughters. You know, they're everyone's daughters. They just aren't the daughters to their parents. They're the daughters of the entire Delphi community. And then spreading out, they're the daughters of everyone in this world. Because the fear of every parent is to lose a child that way. And that's one of the reasons that, as I said, Abby and Libby are everyone's daughter. And Paula Volter, he had to go home that day and behave perfectly normal and to work and behave normally. Who can do that after this crime? Paula, who could do that in the days and weeks and years that followed? He lived among the community, knowing that he was the killer. That's some serious pathology, wouldn't you think? Mona, is it possible they found the guy because he committed another crime? It's possible. I think that, look, we don't know. I'd be guessing just like everyone else. Did potentially someone from his family turn him in? A friend turn him in? Or did DNA, did science turn him in? Did DNA identify Richard Allen? Do we even know if they have DNA on this case? I don't think they've said that. But that's a potentiality, isn't it? Whirly Girl, is it true that he went to rehab shortly after the murders? Whirly Girl, that's the first I've heard that. I'm not saying you're not correct, but it's possible. Follow the grain in your own wood beforehand to plan and carry it out. Mona, he looks extremely sad in photos post-murders. Well, I think that he realizes his life's over. He's going to be in prison. This case is actually eligible for the death penalty. I don't think they'll go for the death penalty, but that should always be in the prosecution's back pocket so that they can maybe get cooperation. Well, who knows? I don't think he's going to plead guilty, but they could always hold that over the defendant's head if it is a death penalty. And in fact, this is a death penalty case. Shannon Miles, they were found on Valentine's Day 2017. I would love to know from his wife their plans that day, what transpired and his mood, blah, blah, blah. Moon Rain, I wonder how long the cops had their eye on him, if at all. Janice Peace, yes, men who want to be with younger girls normally don't have normal sex lives with their wives. Seattle Ryan, it's hard to understand how someone who kills someone thinks. I almost can't believe it. Yeah, I don't have that in me, that like to understand. Well, I can understand how they think. I don't know why they think like that. There's got to be obviously something broken in this person's brain. Why would he kill or murder two young girls? Is he a pedophile? There was no history that we know of Richard Allen being a pedophile. But is he caught up in this ring with Keegan Kline? We don't know. All of this stuff could come out. We don't know. And when we find this out, this case could potentially have other defendants. And that's another reason why possibly the prosecution is withholding this stuff. There could be several other defendants in this case. So if they let the evidence out against Richard Allen, couldn't this potentially identify or give a heads up to other defendants who may flee the jurisdiction if they realize they're being looked at and they're wanted? Flee the jurisdiction to a country perhaps that doesn't have extradition. So all of these reasons are viable reasons, but I think at this juncture in the case, I believe on the November 22nd, there's going to be a hearing. He needs to have an attorney appointed by November 17th so that that attorney can prepare for this hearing. So I think at one of those points, either probably the 11/22, that the prosecution is going to have to release some of the documents in regards to the probable cause, perhaps the indictment, perhaps, the defense attorney, once appointed and once receives some of the evidentiary material via discovery, the defense attorney, for public relations reasons, may release it himself. The defense plays the press all the time. And we know that. It's not just the prosecution. The defense plays the press. And look at the amount of press in this case. True Crime with Shannon, I believe they looked back at files and decided to look at him again since he was originally a witness. You know something, guys, and Shannon, that's a good point. I've worked hundreds of murder cases. I had a great team in Manhattan North Homicide. I had 6 detectives. They were all excellent. They were all excellent. You know something, I learned so much about investigation from working with detectives, and also from my background in anti-crime and being a RIP sergeant, which stands for Robbery Investigation Program. And I learned so much, but from detectives that taught me so much about the investigative process. And one of the things I know, and I've heard it said by great homicide investigators, is that when you hit a dead end in a case, start over. Start over. Start from the beginning. Read the case folder again. Go through it again. Maybe a light bulb will go off in your head. So homicide investigation is a series of stopping and starting all over again, you know? And this case, they never used the language cold case. It was never, ever called a cold case. However, again, homicide investigation is a series of stopping and starting. And also, and I say this many, many times, direction. Sometimes you're going in one direction. And what happens when that direction doesn't work out and it's wrong? You have to be ready to go up against the powers that be and tell the big bosses, hey, chief, we were wrong. This is not the direction of this case. And he may yell at you and curse at you and, you know, use words that, well, you've mostly heard almost all words, but use words that you don't want to hear and telling you you're wrong. But I used to always say, believe what the detectives tell you. And a lot of times in egos in investigations, the guy with the stars on his shoulder wants to believe that he's smarter than everybody else. But guess what? You better believe your detectives. You better believe what they say. Because guess what? They're right and you're wrong, chief. They are right 95% of the time. And chief, you're wrong. Okay? And as a sergeant, as a lieutenant, you have to be able to have I'll use a Yiddish word. You have to have the chutzpah, another word for balls. You have to have the balls to tell the chief what he doesn't want to hear. And that's the nature of investigation. In this case, I would imagine there was a lot of stops and starts, you know. This case went over 5.5 years, you know. Mona, I still think there's an accomplice, at least one or maybe more. Mona, you could be 100% right. And you know something? And we don't know yet because they haven't told us yet. They haven't told us what direction they're going in. We know that there's been one guy, Richard Allen, arrested, but we don't know who or if there are accomplices, do we? Ronald Logan, who's now dead, was being looked at by the FBI as a possible suspect in this case. And had he lived, you know, he may have gotten arrested too, you know, for something as simple as covering up evidence, allowing this crime to take place on his property, or maybe more nefarious. Maybe he was actually involved in this. Jennifer Bossert, Richard Allen developed the funeral photos of the girls for their family, gave them to them for free. Family confirmed this happened. Horrible, right? Horrible that occurred, you know, when you think of this dirtbag, you know, this dirtbag developed the photos for the family of the funeral. Just crazy, you know. Hello, Phil Leo, Electra. And they found cigarettes at the crime scene. He is a smoker. DNA probably matched. Electra, you know something? That's one of the items you always take from a crime scene if there's cigarettes are great carriers of DNA. Someone puts a cigarette in their mouth, they get saliva on it, their DNA is on it. If they did find cigarettes at the crime scene, excellent receptacle for DNA. Could they have? Gayla Dennison, Sacramento, checking in. Stay awesome, Bill. Thank you, Gayla. It's so nice of you to say that. Sherilyn Schaffner, good to see you. Hope you're having a good Friday. Phil Leo, Moonrain. Seems like psychopaths go about life hurting others for pleasure because the world revolves around them and nobody matters. Their brain never learned empathy. Well, Moonrain, that is one of the things that psychopaths are lacking is empathy, that they can feel someone else's pain. And they're missing that part of their brain. What is that? The id, the ego, and the superego. I think they are missing the superego. As I recall from Psychology 101, the superego is your conscience, right? So a psycho is missing his conscience. So that you're right. You're absolutely right. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. We're covering the Delphi case, Richard Allen, who wrote a letter to the court asking for a legal aid attorney. It seems like he could have asked for this a week or 2 weeks ago, just asked for a legal aid attorney. If he didn't ask, an attorney would have been appointed by November 17th. There's a hearing in the case on November 22nd. So he asked for a defense attorney, and the court, of course, will appoint him a competent one. He doesn't only deserve or get a defense attorney. In a case of this magnitude, we have to make sure not only does he get a defense attorney, but he gets a competent defense. Jennifer Boss said, you only get one shot with a conviction. Got to make sure everything was done 1,000% correct. And that you are right in that. You are 1,000% correct in that. Heather, whatever. So that yelling chief thing in movies isn't exaggerated. Heather, whatever, it is not exaggerated. You see, big bosses on police departments, when they get heat from the mayor yells at the chief. He's not going to yell at the detectives. And then who does the chief yell at? The chief yells at the bosses of the detectives. And who do the bosses of the detectives yell at? They yell at the detectives, or they try to talk to the detectives and say, look, what are we doing? What can we do? How can we make this right? How can we get more information? How can we lock someone up on this, And, I have a feeling also, that they may have used some familial DNA on this case. Those genetic sites. They've solved some amazing cases recently. And I wouldn't doubt that in this case, there was some familial DNA, and it led up to Richard Allen. And if you follow some of these geneticists that are using this genealogical sites, 23andMe, Ancestry.com, they're coming up with unbelievable breakthroughs in cases using that. So I wouldn't be surprised that that they used this technology in this case. Unbelievable. I want to play a little bit of when they first announced the Delphi case arrests and all of the information that came out. It's always an amazing thing to me to hear this.
Now, the moment their families and this community have been waiting for.
And an arrest has been made.
From a sketch in every corner of town, now there is a name.
The judge signed the probable cause affidavit for the arrest of Richard Allen for 2 counts of murder.
And a face to the man accused of killing Abby and Libby.
A man police say has walked among them all these years.
Lived here and was in the community and ran around like there was nothing going on, And it's kind of a slap to the face.
That's why we said never stop searching anywhere. He could be living right amongst us, hiding in plain sight. And that's what I want to make sure that we have everything we possibly need and more. I don't want to leave any stone unturned.
The arrest, the news these families have prayed for, now it's on to the next step.
We now move forward through the Indiana criminal justice system, allowing the system to provide its due diligence and process in providing that justice which is owed Abby and Libby, their families, in this community.
It's somewhat bittersweet, knowing that while it allows us to move to the next turn or the next chapter, we still got a big mountain ahead of us, and we're going to stay after it. We haven't ever given up, and you guys haven't given up on us. We're going to keep pushing all the way.
Abby and Libby, though in death, have had a profound effect on so many of us, on how we live, and as importantly, who we all should be.
Thanks for joining us for our special on the Delphi murder arrests. Over the next 30 minutes now, we're going to be sharing an in-depth interview about the case with Indiana State Police Superintendent Doug Carter.
We'll also hear from the girls' families about the arrest and why they feel this isn't the end, but the beginning of justice for these girls. But first, how we got to this point. It all started on February 13th, 2017, when two young girls went out for a walk and never came home. The next day, Valentine's Day, a grim discovery. The girls' bodies discovered in a wooded area near the bridge where they had gone the day before for a simple afternoon hike.
It was on the 15th that police revealed evidence captured on one of the girls' phones showing their suspected killer, the man in the blue jacket. 3 days later, Abby and Libby were laid to rest. A community in mourning and a community in fear.
February 22nd is when we heard their alleged killer's voice for the first time. With the infamous Down the Hill recording. It wasn't until July that we got our first look at their alleged killer when this sketch was released.
Folks, these sketches, they're never super accurate. They always sort of give a generic look of what the perpetrator may have looked like. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of sketches over my police career. And it's very rare that when you catch the perpetrator and you pull up the sketch and you say, look at this, it's a dead ringer. That's very rare. So it's, when you see the sketches, this sketch really, I don't think this one, it really doesn't look that much like Richard Allen. You can agree or disagree, but I think that it's indicative of sketches. A sketch artist draws by questioning people, and in this instance, the sketch artist had a video to help draw the sketch from.
Image everywhere you looked in the small town of Delphi and beyond.
Was killer caught on camera, two teenage girls found dead.
That September, the girls' families took their plea for answers national by appearing on Dr. Phil. Still nothing, as the case seemed to grow cold.
Fast forward to April 22nd of 2019. That's when Indiana State Police released this updated sketch of Abby and Libby's alleged killer, a far different look from the original sketch. Investigators also released additional audio of the suspected killer.
Nearly another year passes with no new leads until December of 2021. That's when police announced a possible break, a fake social media account that communicated with Libby shortly before her death. Investigators did track down that man, and he denied any involvement and has never been charged in the case.
That all leads us to October 26th, the day police arrested 50-year-old Richard Allen. He was formally charged 2 days later with murder in the girls' deaths.
And on October 31st, the news the family and community have been waiting for nearly 6 years. An official announcement of the arrest and the murders. and new hope for justice for Abby and Libby. That announcement coming from the Indiana State Police Superintendent.
Our senior investigative reporter, Bob Siegel, sat down with Doug Carter, and they talked about the scale of this investigation, the evidence that's still secret from the public, and the unexpected reaction following this arrest.
Today is not a day to celebrate, but the arrest of Richard M. Allen of Delphi on 2 counts of murder is sure a major step in leading to the conclusion of this long-term and complex investigation.
Announcing an arrest in one of the most notorious murder cases in state history, that job belonged to Doug Carter, superintendent of Indiana State Police. After years of working with investigators, Carter told me he had dreamed this announcement would come, but the arrest of Richard Allen was not exactly how Carter had imagined it. What went through your mind when you learned that he was in custody?
Empty. I felt pretty empty. It wasn't what I anticipated it to be, Bob. It was a bit overwhelming, quite frankly, at least initially. And it caused me to really go back in time and try to understand the magnitude of what's just happened.
When you spoke to Abby and Libby's families, how did they respond?
They didn't really know what to say. And it was that feeling of, after all of these years, we heard what we wanted to hear. Now what? How are we supposed to feel? I think they were pleased because remember, we don't tell the family much more than the rest of the world knows. We can't. So they have the same questions that everyone else has.
There are lots of questions because the Carroll County prosecutor filed a request at the courthouse to keep records in the murder case sealed. That includes the probable cause affidavit, a document that would help explain why police believe Richard Allen committed the murders of 2 teenagers. And that document is almost always made public once a defendant is arrested. Why is information in this case, why is the probable cause affidavit not released right now?
Once the prosecutor made the decision to do that and the judge signed that document, it took it completely out of our hands. I believe in the probable cause. I've read it multiple times. I believe in that probable cause, and I believe in its outcome. So I think in some semblance of a short period of time, will be up to the judge, of course, up to the courts. They will release that probable cause affidavit. I understand the question, and that answer will come in due time.
Was there a request by Indiana State Police to keep it sealed?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Do you support keeping it sealed, or do you believe that it should be released?
I think it should be released, but I also think there's value in a period of time to keep it sealed. Again, in time, the strategy will be clear.
13 News asked the state police super.
So, folks, we've heard these the reasons for the probable cause affidavit not being released. We've heard what they may have. We don't know for sure. You hear that, it's possible to protect the CI on the case, protecting the evidence, potentially other defendants that could be taking off, fleeing the jurisdiction. This could be a child pornography ring. These are all possibilities. And we're just bringing it up. We don't know. Gayla Dennison, I believe they're waiting for other people involved in the case to start talking. That's a potentiality too. That's very possible. The publicity in this case can also, as we all spoke about before, we agreed on, is that it could taint the jury pool, where it will be impossible to get a jury in Delphi and necessitate them moving the case to another venue, change of venue. And apparently prosecutors don't like that. They want to keep the case in their jurisdiction. They want to try it in their backyard. They don't want it to have to bring it to some other part of the state. It has to be tried in Indiana. So all of these are, Daniel K. highly doubt they are holding it back because of the jury pool. No, I'm just bringing that up. No, you're right. They're not holding it back, but I think what they're holding it back is, I think it's evidentiary, that they don't want the evidence that they have in this case. Real with Robo, boom. What I say, Canon, see what should be partners. Everyone is a super sleuth, you know. I'm just trying to bring up some probabilities. So, folks, we're going to obviously stay with this case. When there's new developments, I will bring them up. The fact that Richard Allen wrote this letter to the court requesting counsel, it's significant. It's important. We get to hear from the potential killer. After all, he has been arrested. Marilyn Minetta, thank you so much for the $1.99 super chat. Very much appreciated. Daniel K., who's going to wind up paying for Richard Allen's attorney? Of course, the taxpayers pay for it, but that happens every single day of the week. Indigent defendants, their attorneys are paid for by the taxpayers. Phil Leo, if the U.S. Marshals are involved, I believe there is a suspect not yet apprehended, possibly worldwide in a ring or solo on the loose. That's their specialty, fugitive apprehension. No, absolutely, that's true. Again, we don't know if there's perpetrators that are at large. Electra, yup, we are paying for his lawyer and everyone else's as an inalienable right in the Constitution. Yes. Daniel K., agree it's evidentiary. Yes, I do agree it's evidentiary. And that's why it's not being released. So, folks, I think I'm at an hour and 5 minutes. I'm at about the end of time here. I could keep going on, but I think we covered the topic pretty good. If there's anything that you want covered in the future, drop me a line, either police off the cuff, the number one, just one, not O-N-E, 1@gmail.com, or in the chat. You can mention it. And I look at the chats all the time. I don't answer every single one. It's just, I would have no life if I did that. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in today, and have a great day, and God bless everyone.
One episode just ain't enough.